to another lovely episode of Art and Aesthetically Dark. I'm here recording this for the umpteenth time because I took too long with the other one because I was talking too much. But anyway, let's get right into it. I think this is episode 3 minutes since I've done one up here because I've just been busy with life. But we are here, and for anyone who's never watched one of these or hasn't been around for too long or is interested, I paint a picture and I also tell you about a story I read. And then we go from there. And I'm going to tell it in my way because I am not trying to be historically accurate. But I will at least make this an interesting time. Or at least I'll think it's interesting. I don't know what y'all think. But just sit back, relax, either watch the video or listen to me as you do something or get inspired. Let's get started. What is this called? The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That was written by Robert Louis Stevenson, RLS, not to be confused with the other RLS, which is R.L. Stein that wrote Goosebumps. Please don't be confused by that. Now, Robert Louis Stevenson was born November 13th, 1850, Scorpio, explains a lot, in Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. I'm not British, and I literally wrote the script half of this a year ago, and I finished the other half, like, a month ago. And, you know, I'm just skimming Wikipedia with some of this info from my notes and a few other places. So is it like the United Kingdom, like an article, or is it just United Kingdom? Because I know if I lived in Huntsville, Alabama, I wouldn't say I'm from Edinburgh, United States, right? Like, I could be stupid, so if someone could like help me with that, because I really don't I don't know if you guys have territories or districts or what the fuck it is. I'm American. America, fuck yeah, coming again, screw up all the information. He also ended up dying December 3rd, 1894 in Vailima in the AaAD, Samoa, and was buried up in, I think it's pronounced Mount Vea, which is also happens to be in Samoa. Now, Robert Louis Stevenson was a Scottish novelist who wrote essays and poetry. He was also a travel writer as well. And he is the author of Treasure Island, Kidnapped, in a Child's Garden of Verses. At one point, I thought he wrote Swiss Family Robinson, but that was another writer. I think it was Weiss. Or Weiss. I can't remember the last. I know the name. Like Joan Weiss or something. Joan David Weiss? I don't know how I'm pronouncing it. I know who wrote it now, but at one point I thought he was the same one. It was just like, oh no, this isn't messed up at all. Like honestly, like Robert Louis Stevenson, like definitely a Scorpio, because his stories were dark and he was actually considered a celebrity at his time for his writing, and he continued making work all the way up to his death, which ended up being super weird, like really weird, like Edgar Allan Poe weird. Okay, so on December 3rd, which is the day he ended up like being right, Stevenson and his wife were chilling, and the dude wanted to have a drink, but he couldn't get the bottle open. He was having issues. And then he looked at his wife, and he's like, "What's that, dude?" And she was all like, "What the fuck are you talking about, Bobby? What's what?" And then he was all like, "I can't feel my face when I'm with you, but I like it." And he ended up collapsing and dying a few hours later from what was discovered to be a cerebral hemorrhage. The Samoans had watched Guardian on his body, which I don't know why I wrote it like that in script, but whatever. But I guess they either read the Necronomicon and weren't taking any chances, or they remembered the movie Conan the Barbarian, one of the two. But they ended up pallbearing his body to Mount Vera, and they buried him where the spot overlooked the sea so he could act out his rose while singing "My Heart Will Go On Forevermore for All Eternity." He did have a requiem that was written himself, inscribed onto his tomb, reading, "Under the wind and starry sky, dig the grave and let me lie. Glad did I live and gladly die, and lay me down with a will. This be the verse you grave for me. Here he lies, he longed to be. Home is the sailor home from sea, and the hunter home from the hill." Now this requiem actually ended up becoming a Samoan song of grief, and with that inscription was a passage from Ruth chapter 1 verse 16 to 17. "Whither thou goest I will go, and where thou lodgest I will lodge, and thy people shall be and thy God shall be thy God. Where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried." Robert Louis Stevenson was actually pretty political, but no one really took him seriously with his political stances, which makes sense. But I also feel like he was really, really careful with what he approached as well. Like, he was more left-leaning growing up, but he did what a lot of people do, which ends up moving to a more conservative mindset and platitudes. And he even spoke of having some regrets in his decision-making later on in life. And that's pretty normal if you ask me. Like, you kind of do that as you get older. Just look at it and be like, I could have done something to not fuck that up. Thank you, phone. I wasn't talking about me, but thank you. Oh, fun fact. I've also seen so many variations of both Treasure Island and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that I'm probably going to go buy the Kindle renditions of the story just because, even though I know they could shut that shit off, honestly, I need to get physical books because at least they're safer. I only have so much space. I think I have a collection of his stories somewhere, but I'm not entirely sure, so that'll come and wait and see. So we'll just see here a little bit. I'm also extremely confident that I'm going to be confusing parts of Treasure Planet with Treasure Island, because I love that movie, and that's why we're going to use the Kindle rendition, because it's going to be hard for me to fuck that up. There are also 10 parts to the story, so the video will hopefully be chaptered for easier and more enjoyable entertainment for you viewers, if it works for once. Anyway, the story of the door, first part, right? I don't know if these are chapters or whatever, it really doesn't say, but I'm assuming chapters are little introductions to what's going on, right? So the story talks about a lawyer named Mr. Utterson who had a rugged countenance that never lightened up when he smiled. Apparently, he was that creepy, linky friend that everyone liked, even though he looked like a party pooper. Every party needs a pooper, that's why we invited you. Party pooper. Party pooper. Anyway, the book describes his look as cold, scanty, and embarrassed in discourse, backwards in sentiment, lean, long, dusty, dreary, and yet he's somehow lovable. A weird looking motherfucker, but apparently he's like an ugly dog. You know that dog? You know those dogs that are so ugly that everyone thinks they're adorable? He got that kind of face. He's a butterface. Apparently, when he socially drinks, he becomes more alive, but the guy really doesn't say much of what's on his mind. He kind of keeps stuff to himself. He does drink gin at home, and he likes the theater despite not going to watch one in over 20 years, which is a really weird flex, but okay. He also tolerated people pretty well, so well that he was that friend who encouraged you even though it was probably a bad idea. You know, like one of them, like, they're not, kind of like me, it's like, I don't care what you're doing, that's your business, but if you lie to me about it and I figure it out, that's going to be an issue. I'm going to have problems with that. That's all. I could definitely be at friends, but that hasn't been for a good 3 hours today, so I'm doing good. Mr. Utterson was that guy who would always have your back and apparently didn't have a problem with keeping the mask on as long as people came to his house. Of course. He liked people chilling with him. Like, I'll always have your back as long as you just have a drink with me every once in a while. I don't see you in a month. I'm going to be coming over like a crazy ex-girlfriend wondering what happened. What did I do wrong? You know, he's going to be doing that shit. Which there's nothing wrong with that, considering the time period, and I'm not sure if there are telephones in everyone's house, if they exist at all. I'm just throwing it out here. I don't know when when were in telephone, I'm a Google. 1876. 1886. Okay, so this was written 10 years after our phone was invented, like 1886. So there's a possibility that there are telephones, but they might not be that common. But I don't know now. I'm so good. Like this, it was written 10 years before. No, 10 years after. So he knew phones existed. I don't know if everyone had one. I'm just going with that premise, right? But he liked people coming over regardless. Traditions. Now, he would always have your back. He didn't have a problem keeping a mask on either. But in his introductions, he's pretty much a devil's advocate. Even quoted to say, I incline to Cain's heresy. He used to say quaintly, I'll let my brother go to the devil on his own. Which is like, oh, will you? Will you, Mr. Utterson? Will you? You see, you let your brother do that, but not your friend. I'm just pointing something out here. He let his brother do it, but not his friend. Let those words sink in, Father Monkers. Like, just the beginning tells you so much about this guy. He's ugly, but he's nice. He likes people chilling with him. His friendships along the way, I don't know if they have depth, because there really isn't a lot of depth going into it. You can tell that people have known each other for a long time, but it's like, Utterson honestly should have had some fucking kids. Shouldn't even matter if it was a whore or not. He should have had some fucking bastards or something. At least one. Somebody he could relate to. Because the lengths he'll go for his friends makes me question if he has any. Well, actually, that gets answered by the end of this fucking book, actually. I don't know what I'm thinking even asking that question. We're about to find out. Hold on. Utterson is a chill dude who doesn't give a fuck about what you do, right? That's what we got so far. Still your friend. That's a friend everyone needs. Apparently not all friends are there to keep you straight. Some friends are just there to be your friend and talk you out of your hood rat activity tendencies with you without judging you. He's that friend, right? If you're into hood rat activities. Now, Utterson's only real friends were his family and people he had pretty much known all of his life, while everyone else was a client-friendly person to him. I mean, I guess you could say that he's good at keeping personal and business separate. This also explained his relationship with Richard Einfeld, who is an assumed distant relative. Well, the book tells us they're related. They're actually cousins. I'm not sure if the townspeople knew, but Einfeld's known throughout the town, so it's like, how would people not know that they're fucking related? But for some reason, the book tells us they're a distant relative. But then later on, Utterson reveals they're actually cousins, so it's just like, that's not very distant. Like, they grew up wearing, like, shitty clothes and having Christmases together where they had to pretend to say thank you. And home Uncle Cleve don't feel annoyed. Get him off the couch and to sleep. Be like, you're making too much noise. Anyway, let's continue. Now, Mr. Einfeld is well known in town, which is why, I don't know why the book's playing games. It's just like, dude, like, just tell me they're cousins. Like, you didn't have to be out on the street. I don't know why. Like, that's such a Scorpio fucking thing to do. Be like, oh, they're distant relatives, and then like one of the characters like, yeah, this is my cousin. It's just like, you made this all dramatic for no fucking reason. Now, a lot of people didn't see what the two even had in common. Well, they're cousins, so you know it doesn't matter. But the most common encounters the townsfolk have ever found them to have was just two dudes enjoying the silence with someone who was actually a friend and lived that life and didn't need a telephone in order to get a hold of someone to do anything. No, they had a relationship. They had a pattern. They've been bros for life. And mind you, they did this like once a week and just ignored the world just to chill with each other, enjoy good company, maybe chuckle without saying anything. Like that, it was great. I'm probably smoking the devil's lettuce the kids are into nowadays, bribing the paper boys so they're like buy you like 5 cigarettes, okay? Just give me the weed. Now make it 10, mister. Like that, kids be doing that shit too. I guarantee you they would. They get the product hold right in front of you and then demand 20. Generally be cutthroat if you give them the right fucking guidance. I swear to God. Anyway, one of their rambles together took them down an alley. I think the book said by street, but I don't know if that an intersection or right. So I'm just going to assume that it's some sort of alley that's cut in between the main street, right? But it's somewhere in London, which I've never been to. I've heard things about London. I don't know if I'll ever go there. It was a street that was called Quiet Street, and it was a small ways through. On the weekdays, it was busy in this area, right? And people were living there. They were on a marketplace. They were selling shit. They were living their best lives, thriving on their businesses and making bank. Pretty sure that they were going to get comfortable with their sales and stuff. Bitches are smiling because they get paid for their nails and weave and crochet hair because they be balling. The men are responsible in the house, taking care of the children and teaching them how to be real men and how to actually fight bears. Even on the weekends, the club was lit. DJ Utterson was in the house. That shit was so lit as fuck, yeah. Now, there are 2 doors to one corner on the left going towards the east, where it led to the entry of a court. And from there was a 2-story building that's described as, quote-unquote, sinister. See, I love old books. You wanna know why I love old books? Because the books from back in the day used words in their literal sense. If an author said epic, it wasn't a catchphrase. It was a warning that you're about to be sucked into the earth by an epic earthquake that destroyed 3 states over and causes destruction and thousands upon thousands of deaths endlessly, but with prettier words that are structured better. There's just something more poetic about older books. And mind you, this is like, I don't even know how many hundreds of years old this is. It's a good bit though. At least a good 200, 250 or some shit like that. It's old. The language is crazy. Anyway, the building had no windows or openings, but it did have a door on the first floor, blistered and stained. Homeless folk and school kids all clung to the place like 26-year-old with his first MILF, and nobody could seem to get these folks to scatter. Now, these 2 men were both on one on the other side of the street, but when they got closer, Einfield picked up his cane, pointed, and was like, hey, do you remember anything about this place? I think I recognize the door. And Einerman's like, yeah, I know about it. And then Einfield's like, yeah, and it came with a weird-ass origin story, too. But if I'm remembering. That's how I'm translating this conversation, because at least I make it sound a little bit more exciting. This is, the actual text from the book is more Shakespearean almost in nature. But with Shakespeare, I needed a translator. This isn't too bad. This is not nearly as bad. Because what they originally said was, what did he say? Did you ever remark that door? It is connected in my mind with a very odd story. That's actually what they said. It took me a minute to actually like be looking at that, being like, what the f-? So Utterson was all like, oh, so what's the story? And Einfield says, well, this little story is all about how one doctor's life turned upside down. Not really, but it will, don't worry. He actually starts the story by telling his friend about how he was coming home from someplace at the end of the world, which tells us Einfield travels a lot in his younger days, and his memory is probably like, yeah, it's not the best. I mean, he doesn't remember where he's coming from. I'm not saying he's an unreliable narrator, but it's kind of sketchy. Kind of sus, my guy. You can't tell us where you're coming from. He kept on the part of the street that was nothing but street lights and lamps, and that was as empty as a church, he called it. At some point, he sees two people. One is walking quickly with a limp, while the other was a little girl, running as fast as she could down a four-way, which is terrifying, because it's like, who isn't watching their kid? Like, I noticed this is like, what? 1886 this book was written in, so like the book actually doesn't give us an established timeline, but I'm at least going with the date that it was published, so I'll go with that. It's at least the 1800s. Frankenstein is roaming somewhere. Well, the monster of Frankenstein is roaming somewhere. Frankenstein is wondering where the fuck monster is. The monster of Frankenstein is roaming London, just being like, what the fuck? Why am I even existing? Why did he create me? I don't know, I just feel a certain way. Like, I know it's that timeline, but it's just like, why is a 4-year-old just running in full speed down a four-way? Like, something won't hit him. I know it's the dead of... Like, this is nighttime, mind you, in this story, I believe. I think it's nighttime, but it doesn't matter. Now, they ended up running into each other, this guy with a limp and this kid, right? And the limping figure basically attacks the girl. And by attack, what I really mean is, from what the book describes, straight up runs her over like nothing, like stepping all over her and shit. Which is like, how old was this fucking kid? Like, how old was this kid? Because they're out, like, because there's something distinct in this that I'm going to point out later, because it bothers me with this whole description of this right here. We'll come back to it. Why did he trample all over the kid? I'm assuming trample is the right word here, because that's the only way I can describe it in my head. What for? No, I don't know. I wasn't there. But Einfield remembers the sound a little bit, but he recalls the scene with grand horror, and it was enough for Einfield to stop the guy from running and being snatched up from by the back of the neck. Like, he had to get this dude. He had to, because there was more people coming, and it turned out that, like, they were running after this kid, so apparently this kid just wasn't wandering off. People were actually looking for her. It was just like, oh my god, my baby. And then, like, I guess they heard the screams of her getting stomped the fuck out, like it's American History X, and they came a-running, right? Because it's just like, oh my god, my baby. And then I guess they realized what happened, and they were just like, my baby, we're gonna murder you. And like, oh my god, the women wanted his blood, so did the men, but murder is still illegal, even in a fictional story. Dude who attacked the girl gave Einfield a look that made him break a sweat. Like, eventually, there was a doctor who was one of them sawbones, which that's how the book describes it, but I'm assuming that it's a person who saws bones off of patients, like an amputee or whatever, or amputer. I don't know what do you call it? The people who do amputate people, like, are they the amputator? Like the Punisher? Like, I have questions. But like, this dude was like making his way down the road. I guess he was with the family and the little girl, and they were gonna deal with him. But even this doctor didn't appreciate this dude. Now, I was looking at this doctor like, what the fuck is up with him? But then, like, he went back to where he was, realized, oh shit, these people are actually gonna murder this dude. There are a lot more. This is a whole family. I don't know. They don't say how much is there. But these are a whole bunch of people, plus one weirdo doctor who just came from nowhere. And they are wanting to smite this nigga. They are wanting to send him to meet his maker. They are tired of his shit. And he makes everybody uncomfortable. Now, he explained they were all rational, ethical folk. And murder is below them. So they went with blackmail, because blackmail is just right. So I told him that if he didn't pony up some goddamn money, that they were going to cause an uproar and ruin his reputation. Despite the fact that nobody knew who this guy was. Nobody. No one. Not a single soul. Not even Einfield, who is known all throughout town by almost all the people. He knew pretty much everybody, but he didn't recognize this guy or what the hell his problem was or why stampeding a child could be in any way justified. There was really no justification. Like, what do you say to that? What are you in jail for? Oh, river dancing on kids. Oh, I needed to practice, but I didn't want to make a sound to wake up the neighbors, like the ones downstairs. So I just grabbed the kid from out and just. Everyone was hot, dude, right? The women were in bitch mode trying to attack the man. The men were wanting to get back at him, but they know that they would go to jail, and at this time this weirdo is nervous. However, there was this underlying calm to him. A sort of knowing and uncaring, and it was just unsettling as fuck. The dude looked like Satan to everybody with his lack of emotional reaction and understanding. You know, when everyone is going to beat your ass and you can only hit so many, and you know after that you're fucked. You're not guts against the 100-man army. This dude is outnumbered. This dude has people wanting to beat his ass, to stomp him out, like the dude in Sinners. He is surrounded. He fucked up by doing this. He's surrounded. But strangely enough, the dude who is surrounded by all these people ready to kill him isn't as intimidated as he should. The dude isn't described well at all. Simply that his form is literally an abomination to the spirits and the Lord God Almighty, which is a whole description to give somebody. It's like, oh wow, that's a nice way of of cursing someone out. With like, you aren't even using curse words. Like when you're to that point, it's serious. He's all mysterious. No one knows him. And he likes like curb stomping kids, right? He's all like, dude, just name your price. And they're like, what? And he's like, name your price. And they're like, well, give us 100. So they all got like $100 from him from the family. And that's what they wanted. That's what the family wanted. But the strange part of the story is the connection to the door. It's the same door that nobody else could get into prior to this flashback. Supposedly, this weird dude has a key to the door that Utterson and Einfield are dealing with at this point. He comes back out with 10 pounds worth of gold and a check for the rest. Einfield and everyone's like, dude, this is a well-known and respectable person check that you wrote out. You aren't that person. What the fuck? And then the dude is like, look, I'll cash it as just a bank up. You can come follow me. You pathetic little weak fools. And I'm stomp your kids again. I'll fucking do it again. That's his mentality. But he's trying not to get murdered, rightfully so. So we can't be, having that. Now, when the bank opens, they all make a downfield, and Einfield himself cashes the check and finds out the signature is authentic. It's not a forgery and not a stolen check either. This weirdo dude was not lying. He just has a thing for river dancing on children, that's all. Now, Utterson is all like, word, dude? And Einfield, like, affirms this, right? Then he calls the place the Blackmail House and mentions how dude got a check from this guy. And the guy was a man who was pretty well known for his good deeds, yet perhaps the check was a form of blackmail. Hence the name of the house he made up. Like, possibly this guy's getting blackmailed, and that's why he wrote this check for this guy. Because there's no way that, like, this nigga's friends with this short river dancing motherfucker. What, he better not be. This dude is weird. So Utterman asks him about where the man who wrote the check lives, and Einfield says he kind of doesn't remember. Sure. But if he saw the address, that he would remember who he was. He knew the man lived next door in a square house somewhere, but he's not exactly sure. So Utterman asks about the place with the door, and Einfield says, fuck no, man, that's none of my business. That was my translation of what was written, right? But to elaborate, his full quote on what he actually said was, I felt very strongly about putting questions. It partakes too much of a style of the Day of Judgment. You start a question, and it's like starting a stone. You sit quietly on the top of the hill, and the way the stone goes, starting others, and presently some bland old bird The last you would have thought of is knocked on the head in his own back garden, and family have to change their name. No, sir, I make it a rule of mine. Never more look like a queer street, the less I talk. Hence, nah, it ain't none of my business. Older books are so much fun to read, even more fun to decipher to get into it. It took me like 4 times reading this to finally get what he was saying. It's just amazing how much language changes throughout the ages when you really look. Utterson says that's a good rule for his friend to have, but that's suspicious to me. Super sus to say. Like, you know, like, think about it. Isn't it weird that a lawyer whose entire career is built on arguments and asking questions isn't asking more questions into a situation that piqued his interest? Is it not weird that he isn't pushing the issue? Like, his friend literally told him that he played a part in blackmail, but it's suspecting more blackmail. That's a fucking crime. Like, his cousin was almost an accomplice to murder. But he lets his brother go his way to the devil, I guess. Am I tripping? I don't feel like I'm tripping. Einfeld does say that he studied and remembered parts of the place. It was scarcely a house, there's no other door, and nobody goes in or out of that one. But once in a great while, the gentleman of my adventures, he remembered the 3 windows, and they were all clean, looking over the court that they had just walked through, and that there was a chimney always smoking. So he knows someone rents that place or something. Utterson says that his friend's rule is a very good one. And Einfeld's like, yeah, I know, bro. Pretty smart, right? But then Utterson asks, who was the dude that river danced on that kid or whatever he did? And Einfeld replies, well, I think that dude's name is Hyde. And Utterson's like, fuck. Well, he says it mentally. He doesn't say it out loud, but I can imagine the fuck with the heart. Like, you know, just emphasize. He would have stomped his foot right at that moment if he didn't have to compose himself in his old age. So he asks what he was like, and Einfeld says that he doesn't know what it was about the dude, but he didn't like him at all. He bothered his spirits for the most part, and he thinks that he must have been deformed, but he couldn't describe what it was. He recalled what he looked like, but a full description was like trying to get Lovecraft to describe one of his monsters in full detail. This man can describe, like, all sorts of shit, but not what something looks like. This motherfucker doesn't care what anything fucking looks like. But at the same time, Lovecraft was a Leo, so I can't be completely surprised. These two start walking again when Utterson starts to ask, so, are you sure he used the key? Like, he actually used one? And I feel wants to argue back, but Utterson is all like, nigga, everyone knows about this, so be honest with me. Better yet, who is the check from exactly, if not the dude, but the other party? Now, whether everyone knows that this entire scenario is true or not, I don't know, but it was very strange that, like, if that were the case, Einfeld was telling him about it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, things spread or whatever, but, like, if you have to tell the story to somebody, it's more than likely people don't know about it, because that was the whole point of taking the $100 fucking dollars. Just pointing that out there. But Einfeld is all like, I've been straight with you, son. I knew dude still has it, because I saw him like a week ago go in. Like, he's literally still using the door. Then he's like, I wish I never said anything, because now you're just nitpicking and shit. And Utterson's like, no worries, we can squash this and pretend it never happened. Which is goddamn lie, because it actually bothers Utterson a lot. There was a reason why he asked for the name. There's a reason why he asked about the key. And it all involves his good name. And he's got to make sure nothing comes out. The search for Mr. Hyde. So later on in the evening, Utterson was eating some din-din in a shitty mood. Usually on Sundays, his hobby is to sit in front of the fire and read his books until he heard the church bells ring at midnight, and then he'd go to bed by. However, this night was different because Utterson was absolutely bothered by what his friend, which is actually his cousin, told him. Particularly not just the part about how dude just trampled kids for funsies with his feet, but also the circumstances of this check and everything else. It was enough for him to light a candle and go upstairs to his business room where he kept a safe. What was in the safe? Well, there was a will. Whose will? A guy by the name of Dr. Henry Jekyll. And that was the reason why he was bothered by what Einfeld told him earlier. So then obviously he was lying when he said everyone knew about it. He was lying when everyone was... So he didn't know about this, but he had suspicions of this. Well, maybe he did. I don't know. But he obviously didn't know the whole story. But no. You lied. He does that a lot, though. You'll see. Along with all of the fancy titles and certifications of Jekyll were instructions to leave all of the doctor's possession to a Mr. Edward Hyde, as well as giving him full freedom of any debt in the predecessor's death or disappearance. Or disappearance. But you know what I mean. Either, like, well, I mean, I don't know. The body's found after he's been gone for a minute. I guess the and or works there. But if it's either or, I don't see why we need the and. I'm just being pedantic. But this is only for a 3-month span. So that was confusing right there for me. Because it's like, is he debt free for 3 months? Or 3 months at the time the will is whatever. 3 months at a time. Does he have to pay it for 3 months and then he's free? Or is he just not paying shit for 3 months? He gets a 90-day free trial, which is pretty good. No, if I had to pay for a bunch of shit, 30 days is not much. This is the will that he has. And now he knows that Hyde likes stomping out kids and bribing people with money from one of his clientele. So we can see why he's having an issue with the whole helping of the making of the will, which he is refusing to do. He's kept it, but he wasn't about to lend a hand in what felt like a complete scam to this lawyer. And if anyone knows anything about scams, it's lawyers. And I don't mean that as a dig. I mean lawyers are literally trained in their career of arguing on a regular, like you're trying to manipulate people who get manipulated at every fucking day. I'm not sure how well that works. So that's kind of one of those things. It's like, lawyers are good at pointing things out, pointing out arguments, finding loopholes, flaws and shit. So he'd be very much one of the first people who would notice that something is iffy and not cool here. Like, they will definitely look at someone trying to gain an upper hand in a situation. You can't really be trying to pull a fast one on them because hundreds of clients they work with and again pull the same shit, and it's just not gonna work that way. Like, your lawyer might even throw you under the bus very quickly if it makes them like look better. But mind you, Utterson is super bothered by this because because he actually doesn't know who Hyde is at all. That's the main issue. In fact, all he has is a name and now a connection to a will that he's only had for like a minute. And he's really thinking about burning it because the implications were rather well considered unsavory in regards to the circle of friends he attributed to, as well as there were secrets not being shared, and that wasn't fair. It's always them, it's never him, not even giving him a chance, you know what I mean? And then Utterson's all like, I thought it was madness and now I begin to fear it is disgrace. Is that not the most dramatic line you've ever heard? But don't worry, it gets better, it's so much better. So then he blows out his candle and decides to go see another friend by the name of Dr. Hasty Lanyon. The butler for Lanyon welcomed him and took him straight to Lanyon, who was dining in his dining room with some wine. Now, Lanyon is a happy and cheerful and super excited to welcome Utterson in. Good friends, right? The book describes Lanyon as a dapper, red-faced gentleman with a shock of hair permanently white, but he was also pretty lively in character. And what's interesting, this book, as short and strangely vague as it seems compared to someone like Lovecraft or Belknap, gives more depth to the character interactions than anything. Like, sure, the book tells me that Lanyon is this way, but the actual way he behaves in the story gives more definition to his look, as well as the rest of the characters, and it's kind of refreshing to see how, despite the dryness of the writing, the spark of life that gives every character its own spirits and kind of invokes the author themselves. But forever am I going to picture Dr. Jekyll as a redhead. I don't know why. For me, he's a redhead. He's always been a redhead. I remember a very, very old cartoon on Nickelodeon when they still did cartoons for kids, and they did a rendition Jekyll and Hyde, which I vaguely remember. But he had red hair, and it was just over for me. Anyway, after they have some small talk, Utterson mentions Jekyll, and that just caused Lanyon to go off like fuck, referencing how the two would have been a pretty useless version of Damon and Pythias. Now, the name of those two sounded familiar to me, and I googled them and found out that they were referenced to an old story of two friends willing to sacrifice to help the other. Pythias was accused by a tyrant of Syracuse, Dionysus, of plotting against him and was pretty much a death sentence, which, like, I don't even know if there was proof. I think the dude was just being paranoid. Pythias asked if he could go finish some affairs first before meeting his fate. In some instances of the story, though, Damon volunteers to take his friend's place should he not return back in time. so that Pythias can return home one last time before meeting his fate. But another story, Dionysus voluntold Damon to his fate, whether the two agree to it or not. But either way, Pythias takes his journey and then returns as promised, and his friend Damon is spared the fate of death. Dionysus is moved by this friendship so much that he retracts, kinda, the accusations of Pythias and releases both their friend from the doom. That was the poem there. Now, the way Lanyon speaks about himself and Jekyll makes me wonder if the estrangement between these two would happen at the very beginning or at the very end. Because Lanyon doesn't seem very interested in Jekyll in a manner nowhere close to the way Utterson. Utterson cares, but I don't know why the fuck he cares. Now, Utterson shows a lot more care, and he still believes in his old friend. But it's like, this is, I think, around the time when Jekyll isn't really around people too, or isn't as much. Lanyon talks about Jekyll like he's a goddamn addict. I ain't gonna lie. He was actually starting to get pretty heated when he started telling Utterson that he and Jekyll had a bout on a fanciful thinking of his friend, or how Jekyll was dabbling in strange thoughts that led to experiments that should have never been bothered with, which you know, you would think Utterson would have asked, what are you talking about? You would think he would have asked, what are you talking about? No, Utterson doesn't do that. Utterson doesn't do that at all. You know what Utterson does? Instead of asking, what happened, or what led to this, or what the fuck you mean? Asking questions that someone who's actually concerned about someone does. He just ends up chiming in to make Lanyon calm down because he was excited and shit, and then he asked him if he knew who a man named Hyde was. Lanyon was all like, I have no idea. And that's as far as Utterson got there. He ended up going home, tossing and turning in his bed, and by 6 in the morning, he heard the church bells chime off. And then he started doing what men do best. Imagining shit. He pictures Einfield's story in his head, where a merciless force of some kind of man just stampeded over a child with no remorse. Then he dreamed of Jekyll lying in bed, sleeping and smiling like a fucking prince, right? Gentle, feeling vulnerable, wrapped in blankets. Oh my god, that sounds one. Wrapped up in blankets, big ass comforter, sheets straight from the dryer. The pillow is icy cool. Not icy cold, just icy cool. It doesn't matter how long you lay your head there, the pillow is always cool. It's raining outside, you can hear it. Picturing Dr. Jekyll in the most comfortable, loving position, right? And then suddenly a dark figure enters the room and opens the bed curtains, which sounds fancy as fuck, honestly. I want some bed curtains. And he's standing over Jekyll's sleeping self, and then getting the doctor out of bed to do whatever it wanted to him. And then Utterson ends up waking up and hope, like we all do, that you don't go back to the same dream. That did not happen. That did not happen for that man. So he begins starting to try to gang stalk this motherfucker by himself. He just starts looking for Mr. Edward Hyde. And I shit you not, this man in this book says aloud to nobody, no one, not a soul, I quote unquote from this book, if he is Mr. Hyde, I shall be Mr. Seek. I fucking love that. It was at this point I could not stop reading this story because that was ridiculous. That is, it's so cringe, but it's so beautifully done. I needed that kind of humor in my life. Thank you, Robert Louis Stevenson, for being a fucking Scorpio and just throwing that in for no fucking reason. It is so beautiful. It's the corniest thing I've ever read in a book. It is the corniest shit I've ever read in a book, and I absolutely love it. It's beautiful. Chef's kiss all the way. Utterson finally caught Hyde one night, though. It was described as a dry night with frost in the air, which is I wouldn't necessarily call it dry, maybe lack of humidity, but if there's frost in the air, that means there's moisture in the air, but I guess I'm being just technical, but that's what I wrote, Now, the streets were clean, and by 10 o'clock p.m., businesses were closing down for the night, so this is a sundown town, okay. I don't know, they didn't have 24-hour shitty. Utterson hadn't even been at his post. Oh my god, he had a post. For 30 minutes, when he noticed some funny footsteps coming his way. He had been stalking this guy for so long that he gotten used to the noises of the neighborhood. This man was here probably every night for a minute. He listened as the steps got closer, rounding the end of the street, and he saw the man that was small and plainly dressed. Even from the distance ahead, the man just gave off some weird vibes, and the dude went straight to the door with a key he got from his pocket. Now, you remember when I mentioned there was something about the description about this dude in the beginning when it came to the kid? Now, this guy is accused of trampling a child, but he's small. So that makes me wonder, he must be at least taller than the kid, but is he so small to where he had to like hike his legs up like a 5-year-old trying to get out of a mud puddle? Like reach it up, be like, Dad, pull me. Like, how high did this short motherfucker have to lift his leg up? That's what I want to know. That's what I'm actually curious about. It's just like, how short was he? Now, Utterson came out all crazy stealth-like and was like, hey, yo, you got the drugs. Actually, he touched his shoulder, but yeah. But he was like, hey, yo, you got the drugs? And the dude was all like, what? And Utterson was like, oh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong building. Hey, are you Hyde, by the way? And Hyde is all like, yes! Like hissing at your classmates in high school energy. Or The Craft, but not as corny. Well, it could be corny. This is like 1886 this is published, so it really wasn't corny back then, but he definitely hissed at him. And the guy's like, who wants to know? And Utterson points to the door and is like, well, it's really nice to meet you, because I see that you're going into my friend's back door. My name is Utterson. I'm from Gant Street. I work in a law firm called Better Call Saul. I'm sure you've heard of me by now. And Hyde's like, no, not really. And then Utterson's like, well, Jekyll is my friend, and I think you can let me in, since you have his fucking key. And then Hyde is all like, Jekyll isn't home, dork. Probably why I have his key. He didn't say that part, but I feel as though that needs to be said. Now, after Hyde basically tells Utterson no, he thinks about all of this, and then he's just like, wait, how did you know my name? Mr. Smarty Lawyer Man from Gant Street, Utterson. And Utterson's like, on your side, which I have no idea what that even means. Like, was his name on the side of his shirt or pants or something? Like, Victoria's Secret Pink? I mean, I think that shit's the most annoying thing ever. Like, why would you put it on your ass? But it's fashion, so whatever. I don't know. But I don't mean on your side. Anyway, Utterson asks to see Hyde's face, which he is kind of like, eh. But he turns around and the two are locked to the gaze that is not gay. Okay, just making that clear. And Utterson is all like, oh, well, I don't see what you look like, and I'm gonna go. But then Hyde gives him an address to his place in Soho. And that got Utterson to worry about the will again. He was still bothered by it, but now that just piqued his head, because that was, I guess, this house in Soho was also included in the will. And then all of a sudden, Utterson clicked two things together. But then Hyde is also like, okay, you still didn't answer my question. You know, I'm sure you say on your side to all of the weird, creepy people with bad accidents and deformities you can't perfectly name, but how did you know that I was Hyde? You haven't even seen my face. And Utterson lies, like he does, and says they have a friend. And Hyde is like, who? And Utterson says Jekyll instead of Einfield, which is a mistake. And Hyde is all like, you're a liar. You lied. You lied. And then just laughs at his face. And Utterson is all like, that's kind of rude. So Hyde laughs at his face again and rushes to the door before Utterson corrects. And he ends up striding slowly back home, where Utterson does. I always stop it now and then and think that there's something more going on, referencing an old nursery rhyme, which happens to be written in 1680 as a satirical poet. Tom Brown happened to écrire. Now, he was a student at the Oxford University of Christ Church, where he got into some trouble and was sent to the dean, Dr. John Fell. Now, Dr. Fell, 1625 to 1686? Damn. I feel like he could still live a little bit longer. I mean, he didn't. So I guess that coulds out there, but damn. Now, this man was an English clergyman, the dean of the Christ Church, who later became the Bishop of Oxford. Dr. Fell, he was furious with Tom Brown, but before expelling him, he sent him a test. What? I don't understand why he expelled him for, but whatever, I didn't write it in there. If Tom passed the test to assess whether he could use a literary style marked by the use of an epigram, he would not be sent down. The test was to further translate an extempore work by Martial, who is the most well-known of Roman epigraphists. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Martial's epigraph was in Latin as follows: Non monte sabidi, nec possessum decre quare, hoc tenum posso decre non amato te. Brown made an excellent English translation. I do not like you, Sabitas, and I can't say why. All I can say is I don't fucking like you. I had the fucking name of that. Tom Brown used this as a basis to then compose a witty nursery rhyme. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. The nursery rhyme, I do not like thee, Dr. Fell, was not included in Mother Goose's collections until 1926, following the rhyme's inclusion in lesser familiar nursery rhymes by Robert Graves, who, he lived from 1895 to 1985. Yeah, pretty long ass life. I consider it a palindrome right there because all the numbers are just switched. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. The reason why I cannot tell, but this I know and know full well. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. That's the poem that Utterson is ruffling, simply calling Hyde a troglodyte. I'm sorry, like, half of this I wrote, like, last year, or some odd time before last year, like, at least a year and a half ago, so I don't even remember something what I wrote, but that just took me the fuck out. Oh my. So then he starts going to woe is to Jekyll, because apparently Jekyll has a penchant for bad boys and those who possibly sold their souls to the devil. So Utterson rounded the corner and went to Jekyll's front door and knocked. He was met like the butler, Poole, who went to see if Jekyll was home, and Utterson was relieved to know that the doctor wasn't home after all. So why doesn't he get in his house then with the key? Like, that's a better question, but we gotta let it go. So Utterson mentioned seeing Hyde enter Jekyll's old dissecting room. Being Jekyll's friend, it was more than logical for Utterson to recognize Jekyll's back door. You know, the blackmail house. Hydefield didn't, or maybe he pretended to, for the sake of staying out of drama, know that it was Jekyll's place. I don't know why. But then again, Hydefield is the smartest man in the room because he's not asking questions. Now, Poole then informed Utterson that Hyde has the key to the door, and Utterson mentions that Jekyll must really trust this weirdo, and Poole tells him that the staff have been ordered to obey his every command. When he mentions how he's never met Hyde before, Utter informed him that Hyde never really comes to that side of the house and sticks around the laboratory more than anything. And with that, Utterson tells Poole goodnight, and then he heads home. Utterson starts going off in his head about how wild Jekyll was in his younger years, which, okay, God doesn't have a statute of limitations, which is like, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? He literally went through this horrible thinking where he imagines that Jekyll must have done something, anything to explain why he's hanging around with a guy named Hyde, right? Something must have happened. He's assuming blackmail or something akin to it. But as I read over what he was putting out for like the 4th or 5th time in a row, because my brain is easily distracted by shiny things and such, I kind of started to realize that Jekyll is super shady to have had a friend like Utterson, or Utterson doesn't know the devil very well, considering he was brave enough to go grab on the shoulder of Hyde and didn't have a problem using it being an accident for surezies. And when I say read this 4 times, I don't mean like just this section, I mean the entire book. I like to reread things just to make sure I don't miss anything, because sometimes I don't catch stuff as I'm reading it because it's like dyslexia and shit. After the 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th time, especially if it's a good book, probably 8th or 9th time, I usually get everything, but I have to go over it many times. But here it's kind of like, I'm just letting y'all know, after reading this book so many times, like, I'm with Lanyon. I don't like Jekyll. I don't like Jekyll at all. Now, Utterson is also concerned that Hyde will know, or at least learn about the will, and decided to get rid of Jekyll even quicker, because that's, he thinks it's something like that. Which is like, dude, if your friend has been doing shit like this for so long, do you really want to be friends with them? Like, is it a really good idea to be hanging out with someone who doesn't even tell you? A Jew who rubs everyone the wrong way and rubber dances on kids is now air and such. Like, Utterson is super slow and gullible, not gonna lie. And it's like, he's not paying attention. Like, you know, if you have mutual friends, and your friend starts distancing themselves from this one, I don't know, man. It's just weird. It's just weird. Dr. Jekyll was quite at ease. So 2 weeks later, Dr. Jekyll had a dinner party with 5 or 6 of his friends, including Utterson, who hung around at the end. Now, he does this pretty often at parties because he does like to chat with the host and be like, what's up, my dude? This is a great party. Let's talk about old times and rummage and have some wine and just chat for a minute. Because that's how he is. He just likes hanging out with people. He likes people coming to his house. He likes hanging out with people. He is very much a social butterfly. And Jekyll had a quote-unquote sincere and warm affection, unquote, for the man. Kind of sus, bro, but we'll pause and just leave it there. Also, Jekyll is popularly described as a large, well-made, smooth-faced man of 50, with something of a stylish cast, perhaps, but every mark of capacity and kindness. Now, Utterson finally says that he's been wanting to talk to Jekyll about the will, and Jekyll answers, and I fucking quote, because this right here set the whole mood for the book. It really made me start looking at Utterson like, what the fuck is wrong with it? So this is the quote, right? You are unfortunate in such a client. I never saw a man so distressed as you were by my will, unless it were that Hyde-bound pennant. Lanyon, at what he called my scientific heresies. Oh, I know he's a good fellow, you needn't frown, an excellent fellow, and I've always meant to see more of him, but a Hyde-bound pennant for all that. An ignorant, blatant pennant. I was never more disappointed in any man than Lanyon. Did you hear that? Did you hear that man just ignored the entire conversation? This is like Utterson asked him about the fucking will. Utterson, I don't know if Lanyon might know about the will, so far as from what I could tell, not really. He didn't even know who Hyde was at this time. So because Utterson asked me, he was just like, I don't know, and Lanyon is just like, well, I don't know. Did he ask him about the will? Where am I at? Yeah, I don't know if Utterson mentions the will to Lanyon. I don't know if Lanyon knows about the will. Maybe he told them about it. They've all had discussions and stuff. But it's like, why are we bringing up Lanyon? Unless Lanyon, like wouldn't Lanyon have known about Hyde from the will if he knew about the will? Like, I'm just asking questions because I'm that kind of bitch, right? But they're good fucking questions. It's just like, did Lanyon even know about the will this time? Because this has nothing to do with the fucking, like, Utterson's asking about what's in the will. He's not discussing who he talked to about the will, right? So this right here triggered me timbers. I'm triggered, right, with the side of what the fuck. And it's just like, what does Lanyon have to do with this conversation, Jekyll? See, I can't trust it. You're doing things. You're saying things that an old version of myself might have heard people say, or even said myself, but it's definitely, you ain't answering the damn question. But of course, Utterson wasn't having any of it. Good for him. And he said denied the changing of the topic with, don't fucking ignore me. I didn't say this will was cool. Well, what he actually said was, you know I never approved of it, but my version sounds way better. And Jekyll's all snappy. It was like, yeah, I know you already told me that. And Utterson's like, well, I'm saying it again, and I'm your friend. Hyde sounds scandalous as fuck, and the more I learn about him, the worse. Like, what do you think about that? Do you know what he did? Do you know what he did? Because I can tell you what he did. This caused Jekyll to turn pale and get all black in the eyes and be like, yeah, we're done. I'm not talking about this anymore. And Utterson's like, bro, dude has a rep for staying in goblin mode 24/7. Henry, don't turn your back on me. And Jekyll's like, look, I ain't changing shit, Utterson. I literally cannot change shit. I am in a spot. I'm in bad, Nate. I need this shit really bad, Nate. I'm desperate. But I can't and I won't change my mind. And I kind of think Jekyll panics a little with this part. Utterson is all like, dude, look, if you tell me what's going on, I can help fix it. Which is like really weird how in a story like this, everyone is willing to commit a crime, but it's never committed a crime. But throughout this book, like one way or another, almost every single character in this book is doing something wrong in some fashion. Whether committing a crime or doing something unethical or something immoral, I don't know, but everyone's doing something wrong. But for some reason, it only counts if Hyde does it. But then again, Hyde is pretty extreme, which is crazy. But Jekyll, he just goes into some spiel about Utterson being a good man and how he would trust him. But it's not so bad, so Utterson doesn't need to worry. And he wants him to understand that he can send Hyde away at any time. And then, like, I can stop this relationship at any time. It's not that big a deal. I can end this at any time. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound? I feel like I've heard people say that they can quit something at any time. Brokeback Mountain, that's what it was. I can quit you. I can quit you, Ted. Okay. And then Jekyll has the audacity, strangely enough, to ask Utterson to look after and help Hyde if Jekyll is ever dead or something, because he has a great interest. And Utterson's like, I'm not going to like him. That's not happening. And Jekyll's like, that's fine. Just help him for. Which then Utterson reluctantly agrees to, and that agreement turned out to be a fucking lie by the end of the story. Because if you've ever heard, or at least have an idea, or had a reference, or even read the story, you would know that, oh, that's not how that works. That's not how that works. The Carew murder case. So close to a year later, on October 1st of some year in the 1800s, because the story doesn't tell us which, well played, good sirs, well played. Anyway, something happens, and it's mildew. Oh, that sounds scary, but probably. So there's a maid who lives not far from along the river. Which river, I don't know, because the book doesn't say. There could be multitudes. I don't know which river goes near London. I've never been there. We've already established that. And had head for bed around 11 in the evening. It was a foggy evening, even though it was clear earlier that night. The lane was lit by the full moon, so the maid could see the tea that was about to be brewed in the streets. I take it she's kind of a romantic dreamer, since the book says she sat in her window and started daydreaming right before the event happened. What event, do you ask? The murder. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Anyway, as she sat there enjoying her time, the maid sees this silver-haired old man, looking friendly, walking towards the lane below, minding his business. And then there was a smaller dude that came up in a hurry to meet the guy. Why? We don't know, because she can't really hear. And she's eavesdropping hard, but she can pick up a few things here and there when she realizes that the little dude was there. They start talking about something right under where she got the perfect view. And the old man is appearing polite. She can make up a few sounds, but obviously he's nice enough with gestures and demonstrating that he's probably just looking for directions. Maybe even making small talk. And the maid realized after a moment that the little dude was none other than Edward Hyde. The little shit. And what is that tiny man up to, who has to hike his leg up all high so he can river dance on kids? The story also makes it clear that the maid, as well as everyone else, does not like Hyde. Honestly, if people had to choose between Trump or Hyde, I don't know who they would choose. I guess it depends on the time period, right? I don't know, probably Trump, because he hasn't underlied people, but if Hyde was a Democrat, then in fact, the book goes on to describe that this gentle and innocent-looking old man, which there's no such thing, is trying to make a conversation and possibly asking for directions or some shit. And Hyde just finally loses his patience with quickness with this old man. And he is carrying this heavy cane in his hand that he be trifling with, as the book describes. Literally using the word trifling. I was impressed. Now Hyde, after losing his patience, it just snaps. And he just uses that motherfucker to crack that old man in the head because he was tired of all that. Blah, 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 blah. It's a wonderful night. Blah, blah, blah. Well, where do you live at, sir? He's just sick of that. Like, stop talking to him. Okay, it was a little bit dark. My bad, y'all. But to be fair, this is art and aesthetically dark, so... The maid describes it as Hyde started stamping his feet and flinging the cane around like a manlet. The old man had to take a step back to catch his bearing, but Hyde jumps on him and beats him down with the heavy cane and then proceeds to punch, stop, and club this man, and the maid could hear the bones being broken as he tramped and stamped the man into a pulp as much as he could. I'd almost assume there's a habit here. He did this with a small child. Was he going to do this as a small kid if the family hadn't run up looking for her? After she just took the fuck off because no one was holding the baby's hand? No one was watching the kids? Because he probably would have done the same thing, minus the cane. But it definitely demonstrates that this man likes stomping other people down, despite being a short king himself. Also, let me tell you something about canes as someone who uses one on the regular, right? Canes can be lightweight and are easily weapons if you know how to use one. In fact, there are canes that are specially made for combat. And because they're lightweight, they can move very swiftly and they will do a lot of damage. You know those welts you get if you got hit with a wiffle bat? Same thing with a fucking cane, except it could be anywhere someone wants to swing at you, and the worst part is the handle thing, they can just rotate that bitch, just keep cracking you in the face with it. Even if you catch it, oh okay, you caught it, cool, I'm gonna fucking knock it into your fucking face and then grab it from the back and pull it forward. People could do things like that with cane. There's actual martial arts styles and fighting styles for people to use canes as fighting weapons. Like, you can unalive someone if you hit him on the temple with 8 pounds or more of pressure. Even strangle somebody with a very hook. Like the one I have is shaped like a raven and a crow, and the end of the curve was actually pretty pointed. And if I wanted to like just hold that in your neck, I probably could. I'm not a skilled fighter, but I'm just saying, like I definitely want to use that. And depending on the wood, the cane doesn't need to be very hard or heavy. Is that supposed to be heavy? It's probably supposed to be heavy. Well, heavy, whatever. Or even thick in order to be resilient enough to break a bone. Like it could be a hollow cane. It could still take some damage before it would break. Probably not too much, but there'd be some damage along the way. And because of how a cane is built, it would actually require a lot of pressure. I would say the ones that are glued together will more than likely break after a while than ones that are solid pieces of wood, because that's going to take a lot. Wooden cane's going to take a beating overall. Now, I'm writing this part. I don't know what the cane is made from in the story, but if it's a full, solid piece of wood, because it says it's heavy, and I'm assuming that this is a cane made out of a fucking tree. Like, literally carved out of the tree and just shaved down, like solid wood. This is a cane made of solid wood. That was a brutal unalivement. I'm just telling you right now. If it was metal or some other substance, probably, I don't know. Like, that's the only problem with the human body. Usually it'll try to fight back from getting unalive. That makes it sucks. Now, worse, the last thing Maid remembers for passing out is how the body ragged all about when getting stuck by Hyde in whatever way he was. It kind of reminded me of this one part in Dragon Age where the knight Emmerich was telling me about all these women being targeted, and then I made my character do the joke prompt, and he was really mad about that. It was a fun time. So the maid ends up waking up around 2 a.m. and calls the police. I assume because phones are there. Hyde is gone, but his cane, which turned out to be rare and very tough, heavy wood, as the book describes, which is like, that was brutal. And it taken damage, and pieces were found around the body. And by pieces, what they meant, it was so damaged that the cane was splintered in half. One piece rolling into the gutter nearby, and the other more than likely with the suspect of the crime. And this was a heavy-ass cane, thick as a fucking bowl of oatmeal. All the water is cooked the fuck out, and it's a deadly weapon now. This weapon, this solid piece, was used on someone else's body with such force that it didn't snap in half. It basically shattered. From one long piece to two long pieces. Probably could have made a new cane out of both of them, honestly, from the way of the loose description. And this was a result of an attack on an old man out of some kind of anger that really says something about Jekyll when you think about it. Oh, you mean Hyde, my bad. You mean Hyde. Of course I do. Of course I do. Now, Utterson mentioned before that his friend had been in some hood rat activities, dealings, back in the day. But one has to wonder, what has Jekyll done to obtain such a murderous spirit by his side that has been hidden under his good-natured and obvious tectonic profession that's granted him a luxury and privilege and social connections? Like, why is Hyde even here? Why is Hyde here? No one even likes him. He just unalived a man for being chatty. He literally ran over a child with his feet. This nigga's feet is a deadly weapon, man. Please go home, Hyde, wherever the hell that is. But that's not how the book ends, so we have to continue. Now, what's strange about this encounter is that Hyde didn't take his money or anything. He still retained all the personal effects. However, there was a sealed and stamped envelope addressed to Mr. Utterson. It was more probably this man was on his way to mail it out. So this is also another of Utterson's clientele. So now he just lost some money in his pocket. Utterson ends up getting this in the morning. However, he didn't want to read it after hearing about the circumstance of the envelope's journey to get to him. Until he saw the deceased, he hurried and ate some breakfast. Probably some toast or some shit with some jam or marmalade, whatever the fuck they call it. And then he rushed to the morgue or police station. Is there a morgue in the police station? There probably is. They have to do something with it. But anyway, Utterson sees the man and verifies that the old man is Sir Davers Carew. The officer with him mentions that this is a pretty big deal. Because this is a pretty big deal. And he hopes Utterson will help him in the investigation by telling him the details according to the maid. Utterson soured when he heard Hyde's name, but then it got worse when he saw the half-cane pieces and knew exactly who it belonged to. Once again, implicating him directly. But how? How would it implicate Utterson? Because he literally bought it for Jekyll. It was a present for Jekyll. The cane that was used in the murder was Jekyll's cane. And now Hyde has used it to make a pretty bow out of the bullshit he wrapped for everybody with it. He literally broke that motherfucker. That was probably expensive too, knowing it back then. It was probably like thousands of dollars worth for that fucking cane. He just killed it. Ugh, sadness. It was probably a pretty cane too. I would have loved it. Like, if I could get a solid wood cane, oh my god, I'd be thrilled. Now, Utterson plays dumb and asks if Mr. Hyde is small, and the officer says particularly small, and the particularly wicked looking is what the maid calls him. Yeah, that's him. Utterson thought to himself before he asked the cops he will go to him to a house that he supposedly stays at. Even though it's 9 in the morning, fuck. But for some reason, like, daylight savings time hasn't kicked in, so it still looks like that early bluish morning. Like, it's not exactly daylight yet, but you can tell that, like, everything's, like, blue. And the cab drew near to the address, and at the door the men were met with an ivory-faced, silver-haired old woman. And she looked like a two-faced bitch, but she had manners so she could keep a job at least, right? She affirmed that Hyde did live there, but she also let them know that Hyde had been there, but only for like an hour, and that was his normal behavior. In fact, Hyde doesn't like to stay in one place at one time. He was renowned by everybody who knew him for coming and going, but not lingering enough to make his presence that known. Probably because everyone can smell the stink of evil on his short midget ass. Anger issues. Like, Hyde has a personality, not an energy, that makes people remember him because they can see who he is inside and out, often absent and in and out like a communal fuckboy. Prior to yesterday, she hadn't seen him in 2 months' time. And when Utterson requested to search the rooms and introduced the officer, the woman came to life in a really sick way and asked what he was in trouble for. Which, that just gives you an indication what kind of boss she had. If your maid, your fucking employee, hates you that much that she gets excited because, like, you're in trouble, oh my god. What kind of man is you? Little short king. Oh my god. When Utterson requested to search the rooms and introduce the officer, the woman came to life. Oh yeah, I read that. Both Utterson and the cop figured she hated him too. Rightfully so. Even though the Soho house was well furnished and decorated in some style, Hyde never seemed to occupy anything but 2 rooms, really. There was a painting that Utterson noticed and assumed that Hyde gotten it from Jekyll, who was a stickler for good art, and then he found the fireplaces, which is like in the same room. Is that a typo or it doesn't matter. Apparently someone had hurried through the rooms to basically hide evidence and ish. On the hearth of one of the fireplaces, they found a green checkbook that actually was fire resistant. So that's an L for the rich right there. And then the other half of the cane was found behind the door in one of the rooms. Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking for real, Hyde? Be fucking for real? Are you serious? This dumbass went out of his way to try and burn and destroy and get rid of everything else, but forgot the goddamn stick behind the door. He tried to burn a fire-resistant checkbook, but he didn't burn the cane that he used in the murder, and it's probably covered in this poor old man's blood. That's why murderers get caught, because they just don't think it, like, that's, why would you do that? Why would you try to burn a fire-resistant checkbook, but you keep the fucking stick that's flammable behind the door? That makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. I am disappointed with this. Like, how are you gonna, like, this is the problem with smart people, or intelligent people, right? People who are intelligent, when they start to believe that they can do something, that's when they start to be dumb, because they think that they're so smart that they can get away with whatever, and then they make mistakes like this. Like, Hyde's smart as fuck, obviously, but he was really fucking dumb for not burning, like, why wouldn't you burn the cane? This annoys me. I'm sorry. This is actually the last chapter of what I wrote before I started over again, so then we're gonna end this here. I'm just so upset. That made me upsetty spaghetti. I'm sorry about that. I don't mean to be upsetty spaghetti, but I'm here, so just appreciate me. Now, the officer, he's obviously happy about this, and when the pair of investigators went to the bag, they found stacks that were loaded into Hyde's account, which I don't know what stacks, but I guess money. And they were pretty sure that Hyde did it for money as well, even though it doesn't really make any sense. Because, you know, when you think about it, first of all, we don't know what was in the envelope yet, which doesn't really make a difference in the story, but thank you, fam. Second, it wouldn't have been smarter to run if you took someone out. And why would Hyde go through the trouble of burning and destroying things unless he thought there was a reason for people not to check for fingerprints? Because what other reason would you have to bring the cane back? They didn't have forensics, but imperial evidence was still a thing. Actually, trying to find Hyde turned out to be more difficult than anything. Hyde doesn't have any family. Friends are out of order, of course. He knew a few people, including his dragon lady back at the Soho house, but nobody really saw Hyde. In fact, trying to describe him as anything other than horrendous and disturbing to the spirits, most people don't know what he looks like. He gives feeling. They feel a lot. Like a backwards vibe of Jesus or some shit, right? But by the afternoon, Utterson went to Jekyll's house, where Poole met him at the door and led him to the laboratory, or the dissecting rooms as they were called from the previous owner. Apparently, it belonged to a surgeon before Jekyll obtained it, and Jekyll is more of a chemist, so he made arrangements and changed things around, and his house looks more like a drug dealer's house than anything, which is like, so we're just looking at Walter White, huh? With a problem. I need to watch Breaking Bad again. That wasn't a bad show. But eventually, Utterson is let into the cabinet, which is like a chamber or a master room. And Jekyll he's just in there chilling in front of his fireplace like nothing happened. Like, that ain't suspicious. eerie. I think it's eerie. It's just, oh, so this time I'm coming in and all of a sudden you're letting me in. Any other time, it's like either you're not home or you're not talking to anybody. Like, what the fuck? It is. Like, how are you chilling when the dude is supposed to be inheriting your shit murdered someone? Do you even know? Well, we're about to find out. Utterson takes a look at him one good time and realizes that Jekyll actually looks kind of sick. But he's still kind enough to gesture for his friend to join him, like the psychopath he is. Now, Utterson asks if Jekyll knew what happened or heard about it, and Jekyll informs that he could hear people crying in a square from the dining room. Which, once again, we're not answering questions with a yes or fucking no, Jekyll, but okay. So then he informs Jekyll that Carew was his client, just like the doctor. And he wanted to find Hyde and asks if Jekyll is upset with the news. Jekyll starts acting a bit like a twink, and his eyes well up like he's about to cry. He's all like, I swear, Mom, I'm never doing hood rat activity with my hood rat friends ever again. I don't want to be a gangster. But however, Jekyll makes it clear that he knows that Hyde is safe and he will not ever be heard from again. What safe? What about the guy who just got like unalived brutally with a cane? He wasn't safe. Why are we referencing safety for a murderer? I'm sorry, but there are things about Jekyll that are dead giveaways. This dude is not as nice or as kind or as giving or as generous or whatever the fuck it is as it comes off to be, especially when he's hanging out with someone like Hyde. Like, what are you talking about? Why are you keeping him safe? What the fuck? Like, and plus, Utterson's bothered by this, not only because his friend is acting desperate and disparaged, but it's also one of those things where Utterson's finally starting to think. He's just like, how does he know no one will ever see Hyde again? Like, there's another body or some shit? Like, you know, it's always weird words. Jekyll likes wording words a lot. You don't realize it from his brief yet profound appearances in his story. Also, Utterson asks Jekyll specifically, you have not been mad enough to hide this fellow? And Jekyll responds by saying, I swear to God, I will never set eyes on him again, which is like, Utterson, you're a fucking lawyer. You don't think it is weird that he didn't answer the question again? And I peeped that. Like, and I haven't read this story for like a minute. And I remember that specifically, that Jekyll never really talks or answers questions direct. He kind of talks around him. It makes me want to fight him a little bit. I kind of want to fight this man, because this is just like, what are you doing? In fact, no matter what is asked of Jekyll, he always comes off as a liar by omission for me, regularly, because he's not open to letting people know what's going on. Or at least he's not open to letting Utterson know, which says something about his and Utterson's relationship, which is, I don't think they're as close as Utterson believes they are. Like, yeah, Jekyll is your client, and he probably is your friend too, and you probably like the money you get from him, but it seems like he's trying to be close to someone he doesn't even know. You know what I mean? It's like, do you even know this man, or are you just chasing someone who isn't that interested? Like, you're kind of fangirling a little bit of it. I feel like this is the image of a person and not the reality of a person. Now, Utterson was all like, yeah, you confident as a mofo, but if we find his ass, you might want to pop up in the trial, man. And Jekyll's all like, nah, fam, I got my resources. I know for a fact. How would Jekyll know that he ain't coming back? I can't tell you about them, but maybe you could help me with this letter I got. I just got it in today. I don't know if I should turn it into the cost or what. Can you help me? And Utterson's like, so does it have something to do with Hyde is? And Jekyll's like, nah, fam, but someone might try to put their foot on my neck. And then Utterson's like, dude, can we stop using slang in a classical book for once? Like, can we talk like actual gentlemen who wear suits for a minute? Because this is getting too much. And Jekyll's like, fine, someone found out a secret about me, and I want you to take the letter and read it. Are you happy now? I'm sorry my bothers you so much, Utterson. I just want to be contemporary for the Tide Pod kids who learned how to read in 2025. Okay, so that part wasn't in the book, but it went with the story, so let's go. Utterson's like, okay, I'm probably gonna sleep on this, and then I'll open it, cool? And Jekyll's like, yeah, that's cool. And then he confesses he doesn't trust himself as much anymore, which is a weird statement to make after everything he said, but it's okay. We don't need to think that. Now, Utterson doesn't know how he feels about all this, which is valid, but he feels good that his friend is being selfish for once in this whole debacle, which should also be a whole red flag, but let's ignore it like we did the rest. However, before taking his leave, Utterson asked Jekyll if it was Hyde who came up with the will's terms of service in regards to Jekyll's disappearance, and Jekyll once again doesn't answer. He just covers his mouth and simply nods, giving Utterson the impression that his original thought, which is correct, which it wasn't even his thought, it was that's from Einfield. But Einfield already lets Utterson know at the beginning he didn't ask questions. Well, let's ignore the smartest man in this story. But he now was convinced, after Jekyll's, gestures and such, that Hyde was planning to kill the doctor and steal his livelihood. It had to have been correct. That Jekyll was lucky to escape such a horrible fate from such a horrible midget man. And Jekyll corrects him, saying that it wasn't a simple escape, but a pretty profound lesson, and covers his face again, but for a moment out of some strange emotion that's neither delivered nor described by the book. And it gives the reader their own moment to decide what's wrong with Jekyll. Which spoilers, it's drugs, but not in the way you think. As he's leaving, Utterson manages to talk to Poole again and asks who delivered the mail, hoping that maybe he can get a description, something, just maybe he could just get the person who sent a letter and figure it out. Something. Now he asks Poole who delivers the mail so he can play some more hide and seek. But Poole informs him that nothing came in the mail that day. There wasn't a postage, there wasn't anything. No mail, like junk mail maybe, but that's it. But no mail. No one came by. Nobody did shit. And now Utterson's fucked in the head again because he realized, oh, Jekyll lied to me once again. Am I surprised? No. But I'm in my fifis. As he walked through town, he heard a newsboy shouting about the murder of the MP. Utterson not only has a dead friend. Well, this is the first one. But you know what I mean. Anyway, don't worry, there's gonna be plenty. Don't worry about it. But either way. But he also has one less client, so now his money is getting played with, and that's a new reason to hate Hyde. Then he decides he needs to go get some help with the letter and had a guest. Mr. Guest is his name, actually, matter-of-factly, and he's Utterson's head clerk. The two are chilling by the hearth, sharing some wine that had been sitting in his foundation. All this fucking very rich, getting them all crunked up. Ironically, Mr. Guest is the one guy Mr. Utterson is more honest with. He'll actually share his thoughts with his clerk. He doesn't hide many secrets from him, even though he isn't sure if Guest has a mouth or not. However, Guest was over at Jekyll's place regularly for business, so he knows about Hyde. Also, just as a matter of fact, he has a knack for recognizing handwritings of people's signatures. So there's a good chance that Guest could make some commentary to give Utterson a lead without having to say too much of anything at this time. Because this is what you do when you're suspicious of your fucking friends lying to your face. Now, Utterson starts by mentioning that he's still big sads about Davers, and Guest adds in how it's affected everyone and that Hyde is a nutter. Utterson hands over the letter he got from Jekyll, telling them that it's Hyde's handwriting, telling him that to also keep the information between themselves. Now, Guest's spirit was touched, and he looked at that letter in a hurry and said, strangely enough, no sir, not mad, but it is an odd hand. An odd hand? What does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Utterson adds that he's an odd writer when a servant, probably Poole, Poole works for Jekyll, my bad. Some guy who works for Utterson comes in with a note and leaves. Guest is like, hey, is that from the doctor by chance? And Utterson's like, yeah, he wanted me over for dinner. You want to see it? Guest is like, fuck yeah, and he gives the note to Guest, and Guest looks over both before giving them back and mentioning the autograph. Now, Utterson isn't dumb, but I suspect he did this shit on purpose, because he literally wanted this to happen. Wouldn't be surprised if he planned the servant to come in at that time, but he asked why Guest was comparing them, and Guest mentions that the signatures are almost identical in certain aspects, except for how a person held the pen, specifically the slope of holding the pen while writing, as if one hand is bigger than the other. Both men agree that this is rather quaint, and then Utterson tells him not to say a word, and Guest is like, absolutely, I have no idea what you're talking about. After Guest leaves, Utterson locked the note in his safe, and then somehow got it in his head that Jekyll forged the note for Hyde. No, I'm not kidding. This dude is smart enough to get his clerk tipsy and have him compare handwritings to see if his friend's lying to him, but he can't do the fucking math. If Jekyll wrote both note and invitation, and Hyde didn't, wouldn't that indicate that Jekyll is hiding Hyde? That's funny. Or at least covering his ass a bit. Like, okay, so he forged a letter. Maybe he may be being blackmailed. But why? Obviously, this is an era where recording people without their consent isn't even a forethought, because what the fuck is even recording mean? What is a camera? What is a phone? Also, Hyde would have known that Jekyll was talking to Utterson. Kind of like how he knew that Jekyll never told Utterson about Hyde's appearance or even his name and laughed in his face like a punk. Think about it. Why would Jekyll write both notes? Hell, why would Jekyll lie and say that the letter came in the mail, and he even burned the envelope, but Poole says that nothing came in? Why did he burn the envelope? Why are people burning things but not the shit that he should be burning? Like, Utterson is a lawyer who deals with people who lie to get a case to go their way. I don't know what kind of lawyer he is, but I'll probably remember once I read through this. But it isn't hitting him that his friend is deeper in the shits than he assumed? Better yet, how are you friends with someone like this for so long, but you don't recognize their handwriting? Can I say that? Like, this is a time when you don't get to type things on the computer, and you have to write everything out. There are literally jobs where people's job is to write things. Copy. Handwritten. Word for word. Hundreds of pages. This is regular. People are writing on the regular all day, every fucking day. This nigga be getting invitations all the time from Jekyll, but for some reason he doesn't recognize the handwriting. Like, he has suspicions to make his like clerk who has a knack for like paying attention to people's signatures look at some signatures, but he like, Utterson is the smartest dumbass I've read in a long time, but at least he's pleasant, so gold star for him.